I'm Larry Mendte. Next on Jersey Matters, we come to you this week from the headquarters for the Department of Homeland Security in New Jersey. We'll talk to the director, Christopher Rodriguez. He says the federal government is not sharing information with the state when it comes to Syrian refugees. Also, the minimum wage is going up in at least one city in this state. We'll tell you which one next. Those stories and much more, because Jersey matters. I'm Larry Mendte. Welcome to Jersey Matters. We come to you this week from the headquarters of the Department of Homeland Security in New Jersey. Homeland Security, of course, not only being a national concern, a federal concern, but also a local concern and a state concern. And with that in mind, we are proud to be joined by Christopher Rodriguez, who is the director of the Department of Homeland Security in New Jersey. Sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Recently, the FBI came out and said there are terrorist cells in every state in the union. And I know you can't talk about specifically terrorist cells, but why? My question is, why not just go in and arrest them? Do you get information from them? I'm sure you're aware that they exist because the FBI is aware that they exist. Is there almost a game of chicken with that you try to get information and hope that they don't attack?
Well, certainly what we've seen over the last year in particular, Larry, is arrests across the country of whether they be ISIS supporters or al-Qaeda supporters. In New Jersey, we had 5 over the last year, which was second in the nation, only to New York. So we're very fortunate to have excellent relationship with the FBI. Our officers sit at the Joint Terrorism Task Forces in Newark and in Philadelphia, so that we have complete coverage of what's going on in the state, as well as insight into what's going on in our region and across other states. So that intelligence is shared widely, and while I can't comment on specific investigations, each of them is unique, and when arrests need to happen, they do.
But you glean information. There's surveillance going on right now. You can say that in general, right?
Well, there is of course intelligence collection going on individuals who might have ties. Individuals who might have ties overseas, whether they be to Syria and Iraq, or to Yemen, or to Pakistan and Afghanistan.
Well, what's interesting is I read your terrorism threat assessment, and the cells don't seem to be the greatest concern. It's those you don't know about. It's homegrown terrorism. Terrorists are at the top, above ISIS, above al-Qaeda. How do you deal with that?
So we differentiate between ISIS or al-Qaeda directed attacks or plotting and homegrown violent extremists, those individuals who might be inspired by the battlefield successes of those groups or maybe looking at propaganda online. The perfect example, of course, is San Bernardino, the tragic attack that happened on December 2nd of last year. Saeed Farouk and Tashfin Malik were inspired by ISIS's successes, and shortly before conducting that terrible attack, did pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, and then went out and conducted that attack. So those types of, that type of plotting and that type of terrorism is very difficult for traditional law enforcement, Homeland Security professionals to detect and deter, making it the highest threat to us here in New Jersey and across the country.
And so there is, you don't know about them until they happen? I mean, is there some type of way to surveil if there are no signs except an hour before?
Well, I don't want to put too much emphasis on surveillance, but one of the things that we go out and tell our communities, for example, when my office and representatives talk to, whether they be representatives from religious institutions, chambers of commerce, or community groups, is if you see something, say something. So in this diffuse and decentralized threat environment, the public now becomes often our first line of defense. So tips and leads, seeing something and saying something, I think is really important in this threat environment. And that's often the ways that we can counter some of the homegrown violent extremism that's taking place.
The governor made national news by saying he didn't want Syrian refugees in the state of New Jersey. Some people thought he was playing politics at the time because he was running for president. But do you support him on his request that the Syrian refugees do not come here?
Well, I mean, of course I do. And the reason is that the governor and my office and the Department of Human Services has made what I think are very reasonable requests to the federal government for information and intelligence on the refugees, particularly from war-torn areas like Syria and Iraq, who are coming into the country and who are coming into the state. To date, the federal government has not been willing to share that intelligence and that information, despite the fact that we have intelligence and information sharing mechanisms already in place with the federal government. And we do have classified systems. We have folks who are cleared to top secret. And so we want to make sure that whoever comes into our state, that the proper vetting has taken place. And incidentally, you know, it was the FBI director and the director of national intelligence who said publicly and before Congress that there are serious lapses in the security process for incoming refugees. And New Jersey also, as of March 30th, has 107 Syrian refugees currently here, and that's one of the highest percentages in the country. So I think the governor's right to be concerned that we need to be aware of the intelligence that's coming through.
One of the things the 9/11 Commission found was that there was not enough sharing. There was not enough sharing of information between local, state, and federal, and even federal agencies weren't sharing information. You just said they won't share information for you. Or should we be concerned that the 9/11 Commission report is not being followed?
Well, I think that when you have a situation that's devolved in a place like Syria and Iraq, it becomes all the more important to share that information, and particularly if you're asking the states to carry the burden of security, right, and protecting their people, and making sure that they're aware of the people who are in their jurisdiction. So I would say that I always welcome more information sharing from the federal government, and particularly since some of the brutal attacks that happened in Europe over the last several months, some of those operatives did infiltrate Europe through the refugee process, and that's a big concern. Aside from this one case, has it become better since the 9/11 Commission report? Absolutely, absolutely. We enjoy excellent cooperation with the FBI, with the Federal Department of Homeland Security, and we want to continue that. And we are fortunate that the FBI has allowed our officers to sit in their spaces as full-time detailees in the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, again, in Newark and Philadelphia, with full and complete access to case files and classified information. That allows local authorities to be tipped off to any security issue that might arise within our borders. Do you need to see those missing 28 pages from the 9/11 Commission report to help you do your job? They're talking. There's a confidential report that has made news, and allegedly it shows who else was involved in 9/11, and they're trying to keep that secret. Do you need to see that? I think from an operational standpoint, no. The answer would be no. We continue to do everything we can to keep our citizens safe and secure, and a lot of that depends on the strong partnerships we've built, not only among state and local authorities, but also with the federal government. Would you like to comment on should it be released? No, not at this time. I understand. Thank you so much. And look, you have a wonderful facility here. Thank you. And I know that you have you have some goals and you have some new operations, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Yes. And if you don't mind, we'll spend the entire second half talking about that. Great. Thank you, Larry. When we come back on Jersey Matters.